are everyone artists here? Okay.
Pretty much.
Yeah. We like to think so.
Isn't that the case? It was, I read in a Russell Chatham book that you'd never call yourself an artist, you could just say you're a painter, because an artist is, that's kind of to be determined by, down the road. And for a long time, I was kind of uncomfortable saying that I was an artist, and I finally got to the point where it's just, it is the easiest explanation. If you say you're a painter, and they say, what, houses? And I'm like, no. So, artist or art is a disease, and actually painting, I'll limit it to that. Painting is a disease, the only cure for which is another painting. And it's a strange and interesting fact, but it's true. Are we on with the projector? I think it's off now.
Here we go.
So, as Charlotte mentioned, close to the exact fact, my dad wasn't a turkey father, my grandpa was, in Rexburg. And they had 10 kids, but that's okay, we had 7, you're right about that. My dad had 7. They had 5 boys and 5 girls, and Dad, from the time he was a young boy, wanted to be an artist. But he also wanted to raise his family in Rexburg, which is kind of, again, a Rick's kind of a disease. You think Rexburg is the center of the world, and definitely not Rigby. This is not. So this story starts before that. I'm going to try and keep it in chronological order as much as I can. So this is Sergei Bongard. How many of you have heard that name? Sergei Bongard. Charlotte? No? So, Ukrainian. Yeah, we always called him Russian artist, but he was from Kiev, so he's Ukrainian. But he painted in the Russian tradition. And so he was born in Kiev, and this was one of his paintings. It said was done in 1938, I believe it was. But kind of a student painting that he did, and then this is what he really became known for, and was kind of his favorite subject. It's been a favorite subject of my dad, and now I actually like to paint lilacs as well. So I'm going to read just a little bit about this. Let's see, maybe I am. Just a second. Okay, this is like when I teach the 12-year-olds in Sunday school, huh? Is it easy to set up for the Wi-Fi here?
Yeah.
Just to get a password. Just
Yeah.
a minute. I'm going off my phone, and I think I'm almost there.
It's right. Al?
On the wall.
Yeah, it's just right on the wall. I thought.
Yeah, I knew I could go with my phone, and it's asking me for a password, but usually it knows it. So, sorry. All right, what is the network? Because there's a bunch of them here. _EXT. Okay, got it. And here, you know what? Would you read that off for me?
Capital S, capital U, capital P, dash, capital G.
Slowly, hold on. Sorry.
Capital G, U, E, S, T. Guest.
SUP guest.
Come on, baby. Sometimes I really do. And here, EST, okay.
Like your extender, there's the password.
Oh, that's a different one.
That must be the non-guest one.
4, 7. There we go.
Yeah.
That looks better. Thank you.
Yeah, they have about 3 different.
It's still thinking, unfortunately. Okay, well, there is another way for me to solve that issue here. Plan B. All right, so what I wanted to do is just read just a little bit about his philosophy of how to paint, okay? And so that you can be looking for that as you look at his paintings.
Is he still alive?
No, I should find out the year, somebody could look that up for me while we're doing this. So he says, if a subject was too perfect, he avoided it. Don't ask, how can I make a painting that looks like that scene? Rather ask, what would that scene look like if it were made out of paint? Do not copy nature, interpret. In art, the hardest skill to learn is to be simple. As artists, we have a natural inclination to create detail. We must overcome this tendency. The first rule is to begin big and simple, then move towards small and complex. The few details that show character are important, but the main character is held in the shape. The best art amazes us because of what the artist left out, not what he put in. If everything is included, why not photograph the subject instead? Any beautifully rendered detail can be strengthened by this editing process. Even a photorealist must leave some things out. It is the artist's job to only put in the information that speaks to the relevant issues. Keep the painting on 2 or 3 picture planes, okay?
He died in 1985.
Thank you, okay. Let's see now. All right. So Sergei Romanovich Bongart, and the date that he was born, I can tell you, was 67 years before that. He died at 67, I believe.
March 15, 1918.
Okay. So these are some of his works that he is known for. And as you can see, what I read in his philosophy, you see it there. Simplification. The more you can say with less, just like language, right? The better. So. Anybody here? A lot of Utah people hear the name Ovanas and Glus Berberian. Does that ring a bell? Anybody? So they were students of Sergei, and I meant to have some of their work here to compare, but I didn't get that far. I was on this all day yesterday and all day today, and I was still dictating things into the phone all the way up here while Cheryl drove. So I've earned my $100. So Sergei was born in Kiev. This is his mother, Anya, and she died rather young, I believe, from the great Stalin grain confiscation and confiscation of the property, where they kicked all the evil landowners off and put the peasants on the ground, and 40 million Ukrainians got to starve because of that. Fun thing. She had bubonic plague, but she was weak from not enough to eat. So this is Sergei, the little boy. He was the only child, and these are his 2 aunts who stayed in Kiev. I don't know what happened. I'm sure somebody knows, but he's gone. His widow has followed him. She had a son who couldn't care less about his legacy, so I wouldn't even know who to ask about what happened to the rest of the family. Don't they look fun, though, those 2? Look like they be a lot of fun to know. So Sergei, at 12 years old, he was inconsolable about his mother's death. And his dad, Roman, Sergei wanted to be an engineer because Kiev, the Soviets had planned Kiev as an economic powerhouse city. It was on this huge river called the Dnieper River. It's not quite as big as the Mississippi, but it's the biggest river system in Europe. And I've seen it, and it's a big, beautiful river. So he wanted to be an engineer. As a little kid, he built his own radio, and he, like I say, was really struggling with his mom's death, and he was flunking out of school. And his dad said, you know, you're not a good student. And he said, but you're a great little artist. He said, I think you should be an artist. And Sergei said, why do I want to be a dirty, stinking, smelly, starving artist? And, sorry, no, he said it, I didn't. And so his dad took him down to the Kiev Academy, where he had a friend, a professor. I like to think of him as one of his mentors. I had a guy like that. After my dad died, I had this guy named Lance Turner, and it was just it's like the Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. He just had so much talent and lots of good wisdom and everything. So at 16 years old, Sergei was the youngest admitted into the Kiev Academy. It's a 4-year program, and look around. I don't know if you can see that close. Yeah, can anybody guess? I'll just tell you, he's the guy with the most charisma in the room. Which one was him?
Second from the left.
Second from the left. Yeah, that's him. So, there he is.
The bottom or the top?
The
Both
top.
of those guys are pretty dapper.
Yeah,
This is the top.
quite a few, but I mean, honestly, look at him. He could have been Brad Pitt in The River Runs Through It. Okay, and here, and if that's not enough, how about this? Here he was in a costume for, you know, being a model or something. So, let's see. I've got my notes on this and running the thing here. So he took Sergei to the academy, and Sergei met this old guy, and he said within 5 minutes his enthusiasm had me wanting to be an artist. And so that was when he was 12. At 16, like I say, he was accepted into the academy. He started in 1937, and it was a 4-year program. The program started out, this is the Russian tradition, and for the first year, all you do is draw. And you start by drawing a square, a 3-dimensional square, and a circle, and a triangle, and a cylinder, and all these different shapes. That's what you do the whole year. The second year, you learn how to paint, but you paint with black and white. Now, I'm probably leaving out some things. At some point you start drawing the figure, but I suspect that's not the first year. And maybe it's the first year that you draw or paint with black and white, but no color the first year, and I think the second year. The third year, you start painting with color, and the fourth year, you do your senior project. It may take you all year, and I've seen some over there, and they're amazing. I couldn't find photographs of some of them here. So his senior year was 1941, and May, the professors brought them together. Guter.
Was it a requirement to have the Salvador Dali?
No. Yeah, I don't know. That might just be painted on, like Snidely Whiplash, you know. It's kind of like, whoa, right?
Yeah.
So in May, they brought all the students together, and May of 1941, said we're probably not going to be able to finish the year because of the things that are happening. And in June, it was the Barbarossa attack, and it didn't take them long to get to Kiev. It was just a couple of weeks, I think. And let's see. So when the Germans came in originally, and it says in his book, They felt like they were being freed from the Russians, and they threw flowers at the Germans. But, you know what, I'm gonna leave off here actually, so I'll leave you wanting more on that detail. I don't want to get into too much of the nitty-gritty right now, but we'll get back to the nitty-gritty later. Let's see. So we'll move on to my dad. So my dad, like I said, as a young boy, he always wanted to be an artist. This was a painting that my cousin found on eBay that he did as a senior. You know, I think actually, as I tell that, I think it's slightly wrong. She's bought a bunch of our family's paintings off of eBay. She got this painting from someone. I doubt that she found this one on eBay. But I thought, wow, that is really cool. Actually, there's some real artistic talent in that. I wonder if it was painted after someone because it kind of has, you know, it's so stylized, but I don't know. But this is, I hadn't seen this before 2 years ago. So, my dad, as I told you, he was determined to raise his family in Rexburg, so that limited his options as an artist. So he went to teach a semester at Rick's College. Didn't get any special deal just because he was a Rick's, but he gave it a try. And he only lasted one semester because he was falling asleep in his own class. So that's another Rick's trade is borderline narcolepsy. So when my dad met Sergei, he was 40 years old. My dad was 40 years old. Here again, I'm trying to tell this story so that I leave some of the details for the end. Sergei immigrated, of course, to the U.S. He originally was in, I think it was Tennessee. He couldn't stand the racism that he saw, and Russian friends of his in L.A. said, "Come out here, it's not like that." So he moved out there, and he became a very well-known artist in the area. He was kind of like an artist to the stars. Jonathan Winters, James Cagney, Jack Lemmon, someone else I'm not thinking of, but they were all students of his. One night on Johnny Carson. Now I can't say that, I can't bring that name up into too many rooms, right? But I can bring it up here, and we all know who that is. Johnny Carson was talking to Jonathan Winters, and he said, "So you're still painting?" He said, "Yeah," and he says, "You're taking from the master, right?" He says, "Yeah," because they all just called him the master. That was how they referred to him. And we were watching that, you know, at home in Rexburg. Yeah. So in the summers, well, what ended up happening? So Sergei was hired in Idaho Falls to teach at the art guild there for, I think, a 3-day workshop. Might have been a week. I don't know. My dad, I didn't say. So he became a sign painter and was a sign painter for 20 years. And I don't know the year, but there was a Highway Beautification Act passed at the time by Lady Bird Johnson. It's like we've got highway signs all over we can't hardly see. And from Rexburg to Idaho Falls and to Pocatello, he had his signs every 100 yards or so. And they were like they do now, you know, he'd rent the space. He owned the sign, he rented, and the boys, we'd go down and repaint the billboards, and we all kind of grew up doing that. And so when that regulation was passed, it ruined his business, basically, and my mom said, "Well, you've always wanted to be an artist, why don't we give it a try?" So he was going down to the art guild. By the way, he went to college at Utah State University, studied under Alvin Gittins, so he had good training, good artistic, a good foundation. But again, determined to live in Rexburg, you know, what are you going to do with that? Without the internet, without, you know, being able to get out there. Not only that, though, nothing had really lit him up aesthetically. Yeah, he knew how to paint, but he didn't have, you know, his voice. He didn't have his voice yet. We all know what that's like, right? Is finding your voice, keeping your voice, all kinds of things. So he met Sergey at this workshop, and that lit him up. And Sergey recognized talent in my dad and invited him to come down as a scholarship student to Santa Monica, where Sergey had bought Nikolai Feshin's home. Nikolai Feshin's familiar name? No? Okay, we'll get to him. I'll show you some paintings of him. One of them is going to really knock you out. I hope that nobody has a weak stomach, but we'll get to that. You'll know it when you see it. So, yeah, the workshop, my dad followed him down to Santa Monica. I remember it was the first time I got on a plane. Me and a couple of my brothers went down, and I played at the beach while my two brothers went and painted. The last thing I ever wanted to do was become an artist, and I'll get to that. So he started his career as a painter, and I can't remember, I think Sergey recognized the area around Rexburg reminded him of Ukraine. I know that's the case, of Kiev. Had to do with the wheat fields, a little bit of gentle rolling hills. Now, you exclude the Tetons, that's not, like what he had there. And then the river bottoms, the river systems. And that's, I'm sure, what reminded him of that. The lilacs and the magpies, all those things. So, my dad started painting, and this was kind of the tail end of the work that he did, very much influenced by Sergey, but with his own style, his own take on that. And here's other pieces. This painting, strange story. I had somebody on the internet. Did I see a hand over here? Not. Okay. Asked me if I knew who Don Ricks was. I said, yeah, that's my dad. And they said, we found a painting of his on the road on Center Street in Provo. Can we come over and give it to you? And I said, okay, bring it over, I'll see. I mean, it's got to be a print, I don't think it would have been a painting. And they brought it over. Sure enough, it was a 30 by 40 original. And I said, it's not my, she said, maybe, it probably belongs to you. I said, it's not my painting. I said, it's yours. I have a lot of his paintings. You can keep it. She said, I can't keep it. So she gave it to me, which I'm glad that she did. This is one he actually had a print made of that back when Art Beats, I think it was, a Salt Lake print company that Donna Barton did so much with, printed this and several others of this genre for him. Let's see. Yeah, the outdoor still life ultimately was the pinnacle of his work. Like most of us, he had tried, to do some of this and some of that. That's, beautiful Teton painting. You're going to see some Teton paintings from all of us, brothers. There's another one that's kind of fun, Teton painting. So the next one is my brother Doug. And Doug, all of us grew up around this workshop atmosphere in the summers. That was our summer. We would stretch canvases, build shelters, all of these things, move the shelters. I mean, it was a vocation, a VOTEC at my dad's house. It was the signs, art workshops, art, framing, all of that. We were all well versed in that. My brother Doug was the oldest, and he decided immediately that he wanted to be an artist. And my dad was opposite of what Sergey's dad did. He said, you don't want to be an artist, it's too hard. But Doug kept pursuing it, and he had painted a painting of our upstairs bathroom. And it was kind of Mary Cassatt, a little bit like that, but no figures. And it was a sink, a window looking, it was north, and about half the toilet in the composition. And he asked my dad, he said, do you think I can bring this to one of, because they'd have their painting classes in the day, and then at nights they'd have critiques twice a week. And they're brutal. The Russian tradition is go out of your way to be tough. And women would cry, men would cry. I mean, it was just part of the deal. And so Doug, he says, can I put this in the critique? And Dad's like, yeah, sure, put it in. And he's thinking, this will be it. He'll lose his, I mean, it's a painting of a toilet, come on. So he puts that in, and Sergei's going along doing the critiques, and he'll take a painting and set it up, and he gets his painting. He said, I didn't see this, I've heard about it, but I can imagine. Puts it up there, and he looks at it, and he looks out, he says, who painted this painting? Or only he said, who painted this painting? And Doug's back there, who painted this painting? And he says, you paint this painting? He said, either you is genius or is beginner's luck. And that was it. So just like Sergei's professor, and immediately Doug, that was it. He was going to be an artist. So Doug, like all of us in our family, we went on a mission. My dad went to Finland. Doug went to New York, which was a great place for him to start out. He fell in love with Andrew Wyeth. He came home painting watercolors, and he called it the Church of the One True Medium. And then he found out that oil paintings sell for a lot more than watercolors. He quickly apostatized. So he started out really looking at, take a guess. Does that ring a bell? Maybe not. What? Michael Coleman. I don't want to leave. And this has a resemblance to Henry Farney, who Michael Coleman looked at. So this is kind of how we work as artists, right? We start, especially being influenced by someone. Sometimes we find our voice in the wake of someone else's voice. Rarely does anyone just start and they've got their own voice that no one else has, almost never. This is a piece of his. Doug's work. Doug was a poet with his work, and everything he did had mood, always. Look at how soft that is. It's a little less soft on my phone than that, but it's... So this period I call his Western art period, okay? And he had a really good run at that. And he got to a point. Man, what could that have been? That's a good thing it was only my daughter posting something on Instagram. So one of the things that's and I'm going to tie this into the end. I was trying to figure out how to bring this thing to a landing. Cheryl's nodding her head, but we've still got an hour, honey. So this will all get tied together. It's very hard for an artist to continue to be happy if he is speaking in someone else's voice, right? Ultimately, I mean, you can start that way. Ultimately, you need to find your own voice, or you might just as well be selling cars. Not that any car salesman in here is okay, no problem. So Doug had something else going on in his mind, and he had his main gallery was Alterman and Morris in Dallas and Houston, and they'd sell TP Tetons. And Doug had in his heart, he wanted to do these kind of European peasant people, which I don't know if he knew this or not, he must have, but these are Eastern European scenes, essentially. This is the countryside in Ukraine, Russia. I don't even know if Doug knew what he was doing. I don't know. I never heard him tell me that these are Eastern European. He just called it his peasant stuff. And again, you see his mood and his charm. And yeah, they're kind of clunky. Those little figures are kind of clunky. The geese, but they're beautiful. and he tried to send one of those to Alterman, and they're just like, give us another Teton, Doug. That dog won't hunt. They'd say stuff like that. So, and then here's one that, we always had potato harvest up in Idaho in October, and this is what it was like. Before the machines, they'd come and plow them up, but then you had to go gather them, knock the clods off of them, put them in a bag, and you got paid $1.50 a bag or whatever you got as a kid. And everybody did it, almost everybody. We didn't because we had other enterprises we were doing as a family, but this is one of Doug's paintings I absolutely love that I ended up with. Don't know how to classify that in between his Western and his peasant work. It's really just kind of a nice Russian Sergei kind of painting, but different, than Sergei. And then what he finished off with was this really very original still life phase, expressionist still lifes. And it is some of my absolute favorite work that he did. There's the out through the window bathroom kind of thing. It's really interesting, and you'll see this because I'm going to go through about 5 or 6 paintings a year of my last 20 years. And you'll kind of see these threads being woven in, and you'll see this in some of my recent work. Well, you can see right now, this one. You see the influence of that from my brother. So, let's see. Gotta pinch that shut.
So I guess your brother passed away.
Doug passed away at 49. And he was a victim of the opiate thing. He started with Demerol and ended with heroin, but he didn't overdose. He was being treated for 2 years. They were keeping him and giving him tests and everything. We were estranged for a year because, and this will work into the story, I think, in a good way. That's why I'm bringing it up. I didn't know that I would. When we had our last baby girl, we had just moved into a home, and Doug would come and stay with us quite a bit. He was divorced. His 2 girls were up in Seattle. And he would love to come down, and my kids absolutely loved Uncle Doug. And I was at work, Doug was there at home, and Cheryl just had our baby, Chelsea, and she called me and said, come home and deal with your brother. And I said, what? And she said, I had a full bottle of pain pills. I took 1. They're all gone. So I came home and took him up Hobble Creek Canyon and confronted him with the thing. I said, what's the deal? He said, I'm on heroin. And questioned him about that. And anyway, there's a whole, but for a year we didn't have him come to our house. Maybe it was even longer, I don't know, but it was a while because we just didn't trust that. He was shooting up once in our microwave in front of our kids. And it was like, well, it's for his headaches, it's Demerol, whatever. Well, anyway, getting off track here, but for that amount of time, I really didn't talk to him much. He was mad at me because I brought that out. And the family actually was mad at me because they didn't really want to deal with it, so it was kind of an interesting situation. But after they had gotten him kind of settled down, I asked Cheryl, do you mind if he comes? I think he's okay, come and stay with us. This is after I started painting. I had been painting for I don't know, a year possibly, and I really wanted to paint with my brother, because his work influenced me more than my dad's. And so we were going to paint together for a week. We got done with the week, and he was just talk. And I was working on a one-man show for Sun Valley. At the end of the week, I said, okay, it's time to take you home. And he said, I'm just getting started. And so I said, okay. we can work together for another week, but I need rest at night. I can't have you talk at night too, because he was just wired. And so I put him up in a little hotel, and he got a painting finished, a good one. He sold it to Jane Myers, who grew up next to us in Rexburg, Jane of Illume down in St. George. And he went home all excited, and it was 3 months later, I guess. I'd been talking to him a little bit, but one night, it was Friday night, and I was late for supper, which was not all that uncommon. And I thought I'd call him and ask him what was, how he's doing, what was going on. And his voice was completely different. He was absolutely stone cold sober, and he said, "I don't know what'll happen if I fall off the wagon." And that Monday morning at 4 in the morning, we got a call that they'd found him in his apartment, but there was no evidence that it was anything other than his body had just given out. Beyond that, I wasn't planning on bringing that up, but that your comment about the fact that he must have passed. So sometimes I think that he's probably with me in my studio. Where else would he be? And sometimes I'll think to myself, and sometimes even say out loud, "How do you like that, Doug?" Okay, next brother. This is my brother Jeff. Jeff was meaning to come here. He lives in Logan, and he got to Brigham City, and the rain was too much. He couldn't see the lines in the road, so he went home. What do you notice about his work compared to what you've seen so far?
Almost photographic.
Much more detail. So he studied with Sergei as well, and he feels like he got the principles that he needed to get. But his personality was leaning this direction.
Was Sergei teaching on the campus up there?
No.
Was he teaching at Alex Hall?
Never did. So I'm glad you brought that up. Wow. My dad actually made a proposal to him that he come back up that year after in Idaho Falls, where he met him. Come up to after he'd gone down and painted with him in Santa Monica. He said, "I'll do all the physical things. I'll get the students. You bring your name." They did ads in American Artists. Remember American Artists? I'll do everything. And Sergei just brought his name and his entourage, and so they did that, and they did that for 3 years. I'm really glad you brought that up. There was I don't know how to describe it, but there was an element in this partnership. It was doomed to fail, and it was just the cultural difference. And my dad was really worried that he's exposing his kids to this worldly influence. And he thought, what if one of my kids starts to smoke or drink? Notice the irony in that. So let's see, where am I at? So they had the partnership for 3 years. After 3 years, it fell apart, and they became competing businesses. And we grew up hearing what a dirty SOB Sergei was for 10 years. Let's see. Yeah, now I'm okay. I'll get back to that. This is my brother Russ. I think you're still planning on having Russ here. You might hear a lot of the same things, but it'll be interesting, right, to hear a different perspective. I'm sure it'll be different. And this is one of his paintings that won the OPA show Western chapter, 2016, Western Regional winner. It says winter here, but I think it's winter. I know it was that. And then this is a piece he recently did, which I really love. What do you see here? What's your thoughts, anybody? Well, yeah, Timpanogos.
Sergei color.
Yeah, a lot of Sergei influence, more detail than mine, more detail than Doug's, little less than my dad's, so just kind of in there. Okay, let's see, so this is something I found out from one of Sergei's students. His name is Don Solly. He was the last one that was really mentored by Sergei before Sergei died. And he said that the pedigree from Sergei is Ilya Repin to Peter Kotov to Nikolai Feshin. Okay, now get ready, hold on to your stomachs. Here's a Nikolai Feshin. Called the Slaughterhouse. Look at that.
I'm not looking.
Moving right along.
Would anyone want that in their home?
To,
Who bought that?
The dining room.
Rare steaks.
okay, log that away, and I hope to be able to bring up my thoughts as I looked at that painting. I have never seen that painting before. I did a search for Nikolai Feshin. I posted it on Facebook today. PETA is picketing at my home right now. I'm receiving death threats.
When I order steaks, when they ask me how I want my steak done in a restaurant, I tell them mooing and bleeding.
There you go. Man after my own heart. I hope to get back to that, actually. So, as I said, I did not want to be an artist. It was the last thing ever to, I never thought it would even enter in my mind. I started making picture frames in Rexburg when I was 17. Went on my 2-year mission to Michigan. Hit the ground running, met my lovely wife up at Rick's College. She was going to college, I was just making frames. And we moved down here to Orem originally. We met father and son, the team that were making some frames as well, Monty and Kurt Allman. And Monty came to me because I was doing a little more with Carrot Goldleaf rather than, they were doing mostly driftwood frames, nice ones. And we formed Allman Ricks, and this is a picture that was a frame we did. And I'm going to tie this into something at the end too, hopefully I'll get to that. I was going to read quite a bit about this in this article because a lot of it's funny, but I'll just tell you. So it talks about how we were making frames for Steven Spielberg and the Rockefellers and all these things. It was true. Michael Jackson, we went down to his house, hung a big frame on a painting. These are all because of the artists that were commissioned. We knew the artists. These frames went into these places. But we hauled this one big frame down to Michael Jackson's house. He wasn't there, but while we were there, Liz Taylor flew in and had lunch. And they moved us out while she was having lunch. And then we came back in and was working. She walked by, hello, and we were like, hello. Then we got to eat her leftovers. And let me tell you, that girl's leftovers are great. They were really good. So, that was good stuff. Oh, so that's what I wanted to say about this frame. So they had ripped the guts out of the Logan Temple. They're actually pictures of a caterpillar inside the temple, and they just ripped it all out. And they saved this painting by Dan Wegelin. It was this big archtop painting of Christ. And came to us and asked if we could do a frame for it. And we didn't know that we couldn't, so we went ahead and did it. We took it, we thought we could go to a mill and have them mill the shape out for us. And we finally found somebody that said they would, and then they said we can't, and then kicked it back to us. We had various tools, but had a Sears radial arm saw, and they have this molder head you could buy. You put 2 knives in each side with the shape of the molding. And I built some jigs with some rollers and things, and we glued up this wood and had it all ready. You turn on that Sears radial arm saw, and it sounded like an airplane was taking off. And every once in a while, one of those knives would come flipping out. But you know, when you're 22 years old, you think you're indestructible, And I really just recently realized I'm not, you know. But I just think of what could have happened, you know?
Better that than the butcher scene.
True, that's true. Only actually when you get hit in the head with a knife, you wouldn't have known the difference anyway. So we were together in Almond Ricks for 13 years. Then we had a disagreement that grew into a parting of the ways, and a guy named Krieger came in and bought out their share of the company. We formed a company called Krieger Ricks. I wanted to shift the direction of the company away from frames for artists to frames for the design industry, mostly mirror frames. Because for me, we would, well, in the article that I was gonna read some, we did frames for Richard Schmid, and he was great. But one guy, who I won't mention, he's a Western artist, his art sells for $500,000 a piece. He was the most miserable person to deal with. You couldn't make him happy. And I just said, enough of that. I want to make a mirror instead of a frame for an artist. And then one thing led to another. I developed a process of being able to work with resin over a rough carved wood base. And I could use that process to do anything I wanted. So like the light fixture that you see part of up there is made that way, the mirror frame, the table. And then another process of printing to wood veneer is the trompe-l'oeil on the wall and the floor. So I was kind of crazy, out of control. That's another room in the show. So this was my showroom in Springville. And it was meant to be able to bring reps in the design industry in. Every year we would change out the new style for the showrooms, and that was the idea behind this showroom. Here's a little bed. This is our little girl Chelsea that I mentioned. Princess bed. This is a piece of furniture. We had a painting going into a Ritz-Carlton condo project, and got there, and there's my table, and there's my table and mirror. They actually thought I was cooler for that than the painting, so it was kind of fun to see. So then we developed, we had an ongoing relationship since that first mirror frame for the temple with the church and with the LDS church. Don't want to assume that's everybody's church, but ended up doing projects in temples. This was a dome we did in Mérida, Mexico, and this is one in Recife, Brazil. And this was the first one in Recife. And up under the ledge there, before the dome was in, it was just a big round open ledge. And I was up in the top of that, and I called my wife. It must have been, I don't know what kind of cell phones we had back then. It must have been a brick, I don't know. But I'm up there calling her, and I thought I could get to Brazil, and I'd buy Bondo and grabber screws and, you know, what I needed. Well, they have a closed economy then, no imports. Everything had to be made in Brazil, so most of it, they made great machetes. You'd go to the store and you'd see 500 knives and machetes, no Bondo, no grabber screws. And so I was up there kind of cursing that, and she said, yeah, what were you thinking? And anyway, we got it done, thanks to a friend of mine who covered up the things that we couldn't cover up. So, we're going to set up the art career, and the art career is going to not take much time, it sounds like. So about this time, it was 9/11, and 9/11 caught me overextended, and my response to that was, well, I couldn't conceive of not being challenged creatively. That was something I just couldn't even think of, not having that input. I'd hired business consultants, and they basically said, you've got to stop throwing all this new stuff at the company. But so my solution to that was to start an art line for High Point, and this was the first piece that I did for that. And this was basically taking the things that I developed to do the walls and the floors that you saw in that picture, taking a photograph, manipulating it in Photoshop, printing it to a textured canvas. I first textured the canvas, then painting a little bit on that. Then I'd hire artists to come and paint. I hired some pretty good artists who were in between being successful in their career, and then sell that as a line in High Point. Take night pills. Boy, isn't that funny? Yeah. I always like to, tell a few jokes when it gets started, and I was thinking about, has everybody had their Postum and Geritol tonight? And then I looked in the mirror and I saw my gray hair, and I said, who are you to talk? So, decided to not tell that joke.
480.
But now I'm missing my night pills, so. Anyway, so we ended up doing things for temples, and one of the really exciting things about that was adventures that I'd have. This was in San Salvador, and the superintendent for the job had been kidnapped, but he escaped, and he moved his family back away. He lived somewhere in South America, but he had his family. He was kidnapped, but he sent his family home, and he stayed, but he hired all these armed guards. So I just thought this was fun to hang with my homies there. They told me that their guns were unloaded though, so that was good or bad. So my response to 9/11 was to become a serious artist. I liked what was happening with this line. I knew that it could take all of the creative energy I could throw at it and ask for more, right? I mean, isn't that what art does? You can't ever feel like you don't have some place to go, right? In fact, it kind of spits in your face and kicks you in the butt, right? And you paint a painting. Like I say, it's a sickness. The only cure for it's another painting. The agony and the ecstasy, I guess. And so, let's see. So, when they finished the temple in Kiev, Ukraine, the designer behind that knew about our family history and said, "You want to go, right?" And I said, "Of course." So I scheduled 6 weeks to stay there, and I had a driver pick me up at the airport. He was a driver and interpreter. Dropped my bags off at the apartment, which is right in the middle of Kiev, right by the Opera House. Great place. And dropped off the bags, and I said, "Take me to the Kiev Academy." And we went there, and the first guy standing in the door was this sweet guy, Professor Ivan Pilipenko. He was the head of the artist union. He was absolutely the right guy to be standing in that doorway that day. And I took the book, the Sergei book, and opened it up. And he's like, "Well, yeah, he's okay, And I said, "Well, he's an artist. His real genius was he was a teacher. He was the kind of guy, as we said, that could inspire people to paint, to become painters." And so we talked about that through the interpreter. He knew a little English, not much. And then I said, well, here's a scene of, this isn't exactly what happened. Oh, sorry, I'm getting confused where I'm at. Right here. This is not what happened that day. This was when I was there in 2015, expanding it with other professors, telling them about Sergei. Since then, they found out, okay, who were his teachers? Because, they didn't know anything about him. Because during the war, all of their records were gone. The three academies, all the St. Petersburg, Moscow, Kiev, went to the Ural Mountains, where they had all their dachas, their summer painting programs. Their dachas are little cabins, to preserve the history, the unbroken line of the Russian painting tradition. So after the war, they came back out. Here's a scene from one of the classes in there. And look at that. This is the real stuff. And this is what class? I guess figure drawing class in here. I'll tell you, I sat up and was drawing in there one day, and oh my gosh, did I feel like a a bum, you know, which I am still, but anyway. I mean, as a figure painter. Keep going here. This was us getting the mirrors out to go in the temple there. So when I started painting, my original inspiration, does that ring a bell for anybody? Guy's name is Russell Chatham. Is that familiar? Somebody, yeah.
Marin County.
So talk about leaving things out, right? I mean, that's the essence of essence almost in his painting. And they really struck a chord with me. I'd been reading, he's quite a writer too and a fly fisherman, so I'd been reading short stories that he wrote, and my brother Doug actually told me about his work and told me that I would like it, and I did. And so I've lost the 2001 to 2004 paintings of mine from a hard disk crash, but here are some of my 2005 paintings. You see the influence there. You see that? Not a lot of Sergei there, right? If any. So, then 2006, kind of going the same direction. This is a little bit of an outlier, not quite as tonal. This was a commission, very kind of Chatham-ish. This very much so. This, no. That came out of something else, but still the influence is there. This one, definitely. So, let's see. 2009. 2009, I kind of felt like I had my voice. And it was, you know, Chatham a lot, and yeah, still, I guess it's still maybe a lot him. This piece isn't so much, but this is one of my favorite paintings. Very simple. Just this is the Valley of the Moon in Chile. Chile was a job we did for the temple, and we went fly fishing in Patagonia, Chile. And sorry, gotta not squeeze.
Patagonia, that's a long way down south.
Yeah. Lots of big fish there. It was a lot of fun. And it basically, the landscape there was like Montana, but with fjords. It was incredible. So you had the high mountain desert, and then you had the fjords like Norway.
Stop on that one, I love that one.
Stop where?
Back, the one with your daughter,
Oh, with my daughter. Yeah, this is my daughter, Courtney.
behind their house.
She was about 17, and I rented, here again, now this is coming from my brother's peasant thing, his influence. Rented the costume from Hale Theater and put my waders on and carried her across this little stream in Springville and posed her. I like most everything about it, except for the feet. Look like duck. Artist to artist, you got to do some of those things, don't you? Have to admit your flaws. I mean, here again, I'd be admitting all day. Sorry about this.
And what you're using, it drops you back to the beginning again.
Well, yeah, what I pinch instead of slide. Anyway, okay, here we go, right there. So you'll see a lot of consistency in 2009, tonalism. Okay, then there's this outlier. Can I say the S word in here? Is it okay? I call this 3 shit ducks. Those are the ducks that you don't eat, but you still shoot them, and I like the subject. Not as bad as the slaughterhouse, right? Oh, I did it again.
But you're at 94, how many?
Oh, good, I'm still close. Okay, that's, that's why. I've got part 2, part 3. All right, so 2010, starts off showing the shame of an artist when you take a commission that you really didn't want to do.
Were you channeling Thomas Kincaid?
I think I was. She actually kind of wanted to Kent Wallace, and I love Kent, love his work. But that lady, I mean, finally, it's just like, you know what, you paint the damn painting, here's the brush, you know. But it got finished, and it was, but it was dark. What happened during this year is I moved my studio into a room that had too much light. And too much light causes too dark of a painting, I've discovered. And so this year, everything was pretty dark. This is okay. Okay, so that was pre-Ukraine, and this is in the spring after I got back from Kiev. And here you can see this girl. This was on a road trip to Crimea that's now annexed, you know, and can't go on a road trip there again. My interpreter, he was a Soviet Navy man on a riverboat on the Dnieper River. And when the Soviet Union collapsed, he said, I didn't sign up to be in the Russian Navy. And he said, let me out. Well, they wouldn't let him out. He had a cook beat up the guard, and he got out. But anyway, the point is, so he has this old Russian van that was just falling apart, no air conditioning. And I rented a nice new little car, but with air conditioning, and we went on a road trip to Crimea.
Was it a Skoda?
Was it a Skoda? That's a good question. Yeah, that would be a Russian beater car, but they love their Skodas like we love our Volkswagens, right? Is that right? Yeah. So this is on that same trip, 2010, after we hung the mirrors in the temple, my friend and I had a friend come with me, a dentist friend, and we went up to St. Petersburg and hit St. Petersburg on the 307th year celebration of the founding of the city. So there was this great parade going on. This is in front of the Hermitage. There you can see what was going on there. This is the Czech Republic. We went to Prague. This is a little village in Ukraine, Prague. The Church of the Spilled Blood in St. Petersburg, where Peter the Great, I think, was killed, something after that, I don't know. This is a little village in Ukraine, again, quite dark, but I still kind of like the mood of that and the simplicity. This is Quake Lake in Montana. Let's see, that's probably the next year, 2010. Yeah, no, 2011, that was 2010. Anyway, I'm gonna just kind of breeze through here. In my paintings, you'll notice that they're starting to drift more in that Russian vein now. Gunter.
I hate to keep interrupting. Are you familiar with the Russian artist named Alexei Savchenko?
No.
I follow him on Facebook, and your stuff is starting to look a lot like his.
I'll take that as a compliment.
I don't know
It's
if
not
that-
necessarily what I'm doing now, but I mean, yeah. But it's definitely that vein of the Russian, since I went to Ukraine, and in fact I said that when I went over there, I want to investigate our family art roots. This little mountain in Mapleton. I've always loved that painting. I still have it. Nobody bought it, but it's one of my favorites. This was a commission. Somebody had me do kind of a Barbizon painting. In this period, I'm really kind of, I don't want to say floundering. You never want to admit that you're floundering, but I'm kind of floundering in this, reaching for different things, what I was doing, where I'm going. So you just kind of see some of that in between stuff. This has got to be 2012, and the floundering just kind of gets worse in a way. I mean, I don't want to be too critical. There's some of my favorite paintings in this collection. This is down by Ridgefield. I really like that painting. This is St. George out by, I can't remember, one of the outer villages that they built there, the nice high-end stuff.
Oh, know that place.
That one, he has a copy of that in his house. We went up to Canada to hang mirrors in a frame and went on a fishing trip there. Triptych. This is the next year. So one of the subjects that I paint a lot of is Northern California, and this is primarily because Chatham grew up there, so I was reading about these places in his short stories about fishing, and all of this stuff just kind of gets thrown in. You know, an artist's work is just a product, it's like a stew, right? And all this stuff just kind of swapping the flavors with each other and marinating as you go. Feel free to say, I love that painting anytime you want. I'm needy. This is one of my favorite pieces. This is.
I know where that one is, that's
okay.
Dairy Point, Farron Mountain.
That's not Dairy Point.
That's
but
not? What's
That
the mountain?
is from Farron on the way back up to Huntington, just to the south.
Okay, yeah, recognize that too.
Well, it was Tamales Bay, wasn't it?
Yes, very good. Beautiful, I mean, perfect. You're A plus.
I've got several paintings of that road.
Oh, you have, yeah.
Your style has changed and evolved so much, and I go through that too. I get bored if I keep returning the same style. Do you have any thoughts to share with that? Did you get bored, or did you want to just keep learning different things? Or how did you make all this evolution? Or was it other artists that inspired you, that kind of spurred your interest in going in different directions?
Yeah, you know, that's a great question. Up until this point, it's not so much that the market changed, but after this point, the market started shifting, and you're gonna see kind of my response to that. In this case, it definitely, I guess honestly, it definitely is my attempt to find my voice, to really, you know, it's fine to be influenced by Chatham and everything else, but it's that searching, continuing to search. And I've had people say, I had a client talk to his friend Christy Mollring at the Trailside Gallery, so you need to take Marty on and bring my paintings in. She said, I see Ovanus Berberian there, I see Russell Chatham there, I see, you know, well, anyway, and I said, yeah, throw in Richard Murray too. I'm just like, isn't that just the way it is? But in her estimation, I still hadn't found that point, and honestly, I'm still searching. I hope all of us are. I hope I'm doing that the day I die. So this was a marching band there in St. Petersburg. Did that answer the question?
Yeah. Well, you've said you found your voice several times. You said, I found
I'm
my
still
voice.
I'm
And then
still
you
finding it.
I'm kind of thinking that maybe as artists we never do. It's kind of the eternal quest that we're always aspiring.
Well, you
And just
do, but
learning.
it changes.
But it changes.
Yeah, it definitely
I
just.
think you get bored.
goes on.
You just want to keep learning and growing and just seeing where you can push it further, what you can do with it.
I mean-
I don't know if it could be answerable.
This one is also at Tamales Bay. I don't know if this is Marshall Point or not. This one is Golden Hills in California, so I do a lot of that type of thing. It's a boat launch on Tamales Bay. This is Idaho. This was my first lilac still life painting. There's quite a story behind that I won't get into.
I love your glowing skies, you know, that gold and red and.
In my opinion, if you get light in your skies, if you have the feeling of light in your painting, you're halfway there or 3/4 of the way there. So this is still, this is a very definite Chatham kind of a feel there. And this is my next lilac still life, kind of another Chatham-y thing there.
I read he painted out of his head.
Chatham?
Yeah.
Oh, definitely, Yeah.
Just-
He didn't paint from photographs. He'd go out, he did some plein air stuff, early on especially, but he would just paint out of his head. And he'd do maybe 20 paintings a year, and they were always kind of pre-sold. And pre-sold, he just says, yeah, I'll paint you a painting. It'll be this big, it'll be this amount. Now, don't tell me anything else, you know. He had his way for a long time. Well, we did it again. So in 2014, I had tried to kind of distance myself from the Ukrainian subject matter, had some of my galleries saying, you know what, that doesn't relate to your work, blah, blah, blah. But in 2014, when the second revolution was happening in Ukraine, the Maidan revolution, I started thinking about the Ukrainian people again and started painting some things, and I did this man and the cow from the trip to Crimea and posted it on Facebook. And a woman who I met doing my work in the temple, she would do the dried floral arrangements. And she was in the ward with a guy named Ken Packer, who was Elder Packer, Boyd K. Packer's grandson. And in 2014, he was called to be the mission president there in Kiev, and he had four young kids. The oldest two were in high school, and the youngest I think was about 8. So this was in the middle of people being shot in the streets by snipers, and they had tires lit on fire to get a smoke screen, and you know, basically they had a Russian bought-off president that they wanted to get rid of. So I started, like I say, thinking and painting that again. I posted this on Facebook. She saw that, boy, I should send this to the Packers, and then I heard back from them. And he started telling me about this village in southern Ukraine that he was very involved with, and I got excited about it and went on another trip. And we drove down, I think, 2 hours on the pavement, and then this was the turnoff to the pavement, and this is what I saw. Notice all the varied colors in the cows. We don't have that anymore here. They're all black or black and white, and then this woman in this peasant costume. So I just like, okay, this is what I'm looking for. Kind of like following bread crumbs that my brother laid out in a way. And went to the little village, and it was like stepping back 300 years. Okay, here's one of the babushkas, balaclava. I just love this lady. I think she's 90 years old, still works in the garden every day, bent over at the waist. In fact, she's pretty much permanently bent over at the waist. There's one. I think she was Michael Douglas's stand-in for the movie Spartacus.
No, that's his dad, Kirk.
So, there's Balaclava again. You'll see, well, there she is right there, see. This is her. This is her. Look at the bling on that smile. Oh. Okay. Anyway, there's one of the early paintings I did of her. And then the guy I was staying with on this trip, this is him in the back, got his hands on it, and he butchered it, made her look like an angry monkey. I wish I'd never let him get his hands on it. But they have, they,
Kansas, you set out a saw here, because we finished painting out, that would really ruin our afternoon.
no, this isn't what I wanted to show you. But anyway, he had to start, their power is 220, but they don't have enough voltage to kick a motor on, so he had a what's a cord for a lawnmower? What do you call it? a cord, a
Pull start.
pull start. So he'd wrap that around and get that saw started, and then there it would go. It was quite a thing to see. Oh, there's, see, look at that. So that was his help on my painting. Thank you very much. Anyway, so I'm gonna bring this to a landing here. Anybody have any comments or questions before I bring her down?
Marty, you said you were
Oh.
gonna tell us about these.
Yeah. So, part of what motivates an artist to change the style is the shifting in the market. And so when, I haven't gotten to my absolute non-objective paintings that are in here, a few of them, but in 2014, my gallery in Dallas, that was my main gallery, said we're closing because everything's gone so contemporary. They said, you need to start painting contemporary or you're going to be a greeter in Walmart, which I haven't been yet, but my wife is measuring me for one of those vests, so. So I've since that time, I have pushed myself that direction a little bit more. You know what, I left something out in the cars. There's none of my flag painting. Oh, here.
There's one.
Right here. So Memorial Day this year, I brought 2 unfinished flag paintings out to this show that Suzette Gersh put on, and then I had other work of mine. As soon as I finished one of those, it sold immediately out of the inside room. The collectors came out. I was working on a bigger one. They said, if we like that, we'll come back at the end of the day. If we like that, can we trade that back for the bigger one, which they did. I've been doing a series of these ever since. I call it By a Thread, and just kind of responding to how I feel, what's going on here. And I want to tie it in with the rest of the story that I didn't tell about Sergei. So when the Germans were driven out of Ukraine, the Soviets came back, but came back with a vengeance. And they brought the students and the professors together for a meeting, but it wasn't to tell them that they weren't going to finish the year. They were being told what they were going to paint, and it was going to be propaganda. And they would give them paint and canvas, which wasn't, that wasn't easy to get then. And if they were really good, they got their country gotchas. Imagine that, and they're told, but you're gonna paint what we tell you to paint. 3 of the professors stood up and they shot them in front of the students and professors. And I think about that. I think, what would it take? I don't know if they knew they were gonna be shot. They certainly knew they were gonna get beaten, What would it take for somebody to do that? And why would an artist stand up for something as small as, you're getting your tubes and your paint, your canvas, your dacha, and still you're not gonna do it. What does that say about our spirits as humans, We have a spark of creativity in us, and I think a lot of times we're all kind of oddballs, right? The artists, the creative people, we just are different. We march to a different
And proud
tune.
of it.
And proud of it. Sometimes we're not. But anyway, I think being an artist is reminding humanity, about what it's like to feel and to aspire to good things. And I'm glad to be a part of it. It's been a wild ride. I coined a phrase for some marketing that I was doing, and this was kind of a meme. Art is a journey of discovery and transformation. You never know where it might lead you. Start the journey. So that's my thing. It's been an adventure.